Good morning, and we are in Genesis chapter 44. Just a quick recap. When we were talking about Genesis chapter 42 and 43 the last time, it was the second time that the brothers of Joseph came to Egypt with Benjamin. And in so doing, at the end of chapter 44, they had their meal. And now in chapter 43, they had the meal. And in chapter 44, right now, as we are reading, this is the time when they are departing. They are leaving Egypt now with the food they have bought. Now, when it says he here, it would be Joseph. Joseph had commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill. Fill means to put it to the full. Right? The word fill is to put to the full. So the idea here is very much to fill it up, I guess, in the English, is to fill up to the brim. Right? That's how it's understood, to fill it up to the brim with food, as much as they can carry, and to put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. So Joseph is asking them to put back the money that they brought to pay for the food. Now, the second verse is important that you can pay attention. It is about Joseph's cup. Now, Joseph's cup would be a significant cup because not only because it's made of precious metal, but it's also signified that it belongs to Joseph. It is a silver cup. And you put it in the mouth of the sack of the youngest. And the word youngest is young by age, right? It also has a meaning of unimportant or the smallest in size. But youngest is good in its translation. And this would be with reference to Benjamin, and to give back his grain money. And so they did, and this is what I think we need to pay attention to, the structure of the Hebrew. He did according to the word that Joseph had spoken. This is the steward. And Joseph had spoken words. These are the words. He commanded all these things, right? All these things. And so, as the words come out of the mouth of Joseph, the steward recognized, understood, and he did. Now, this is the important word. Verse 2 is the word asa, is to do, is to make, is to take the words that Joseph had said and do something about it, make it happen the way it is spoken. Now, the reason why I pointed this out to you is this. When God gives us commands and he says that we are to do it, it is to make it happen. So we hear God's word, we listen to what he says, we understand it, and we make it happen the way it is said. And that's why it means here, according to the word. And so it repeats itself over and over again in the Bible. And since we're here in verse 2, it gives us a better understanding that whenever the Bible talks about doing God's word, means to make it happen as you hear it. And so the steward of his house, right here, heard the words of Joseph and did according, or made happen according to what he said. Now, continuing on with the narrative in verse 3, as soon as the morning dawned, the men were sent away. These were the brothers. They left with their donkeys, and they had got out of the city in Egypt, and they were not too far off. Joseph said to the steward, now you go and get some men, follow them and overtake them, and say, you have repaid evil for good. And this is what I want you to look at. The word evil. In verse 4, The word evil is the same word that we always read, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And you remember what I had said. Evil does not mean morally bad. Evil just means that from the eyes of the one speaking and declaring it to be evil, it is not doing what he has intended. That's what evil means. And so now the steward is to say to the brothers, you have repaid evil for good. Good means that you came to buy grain, you got your grain. Also, that's good. Now, repaying evil would mean that you are paying not what was intended. Well, they paid money, but now it is set up that the money went back with the brothers. And the evil that is being said is that it is not happening the way that Joseph had thought it would. That is what evil means. And so, is this not the one from which my Lord drinks? And remember, this is the silver cup. That is the evil that Joseph was talking about. You have taken his cup. That is not what he expects, right? And so, this person says that you practice divination and you have done evil. This is bad. This is really bad. And by divine or divination, these are the things which is an abomination to God. And remember, this is not the God of Egypt. This is the God that they all believe in Jehovah. And so Joseph is accusing them of practicing divination, and this is considered evil by stealing the cup. That was the instruction given to the steward of the house. And so look at what happened in verse 6. The steward of the house overtook the brothers and said exactly that they are saying, that he's saying. Words. Now notice the word, my Lord. In verse 7, it is Adoni. When it refers to God, it is Adonai. When it refers to man, it is Adoni. But both means the same thing, my Lord. Why do people in those days call Lord? Because it is a common word. Lord would refer to anyone who is of greater in power, greater in stature, greater in authority. And so this would be the steward of the house of Joseph. And so in their minds, this steward would have the authority of Joseph. And so why does my Lord say these words? And they said, far be that of us, your servants should do such a thing. Look, we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money which we found in the mouths of our sack. That would mean the first time. Remember, the money was all given back. And so they are saying, since we brought back all the money, why would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Now notice, your Lord. So my Lord would be the steward, your Lord would be Joseph. Because the steward would call Joseph my Lord as well. So you notice, this word Lord is commonly used. But when it's used on God, it is an absolute Lord. Verse 9. With whomever is your servants it is found, let him die, and we will also be my Lord's slaves. They were quite bold to declare that they are innocent. And so they are willing to say, if you can find it, I will serve you. And that is a bold statement because they are declaring their innocence right up front. Verse 10. And he said, he would be the steward. Okay, let it be according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and you shall be blameless. Meaning, if we can find this silver cup, that individual will be the slave. What does slave mean? This is also the word servant. No, we translate this as servant. Meaning, this is a person who will serve a master. And so, the translation uses slave. We can use the word servant, but just understand that it means the one who will listen and do according to what he is told by the master. The rest shall be blameless. And that's verse 10. What does blameless mean? The word blameless means you will be free. You are innocent because you don't have the cup. And at the same time, you are free from what? You are free from all obligations. And only the one who is found with the cup will be the servant or the slave. The rest are free to go. And so in verse 11, each man speedily let down his sack to the ground because they were on donkeys, and each one opened the sack. And this would be the steward of the house of Joseph, he searched. He began with the oldest and left off with the youngest. And finally, what does that mean? It means he started from the oldest all the way down to the youngest in order. Now, how would he know, right? That would have to come from Joseph. But when he ended with the youngest, that would be Benjamin, they found the cup. Then they tore their clothes, and each man loaded his donkey and returned to the city. They are still in Egypt. They all returned to Joseph. Now you notice this practice here. This practice, they tore their clothes. Now, tearing clothes comes in a few forms. In anger, in surprise, and it's a reaction that they cannot believe their eyes. And yes, it is basically to be upset or very upset. In our modern day terms, very upset. And so not only Benjamin is becoming the slave, all of them went back to Joseph. So let's continue. Verse 14. And so Judah and his brothers, Judah is now the spokesman, right? Came to Joseph's house. That was where they left initially, and he was still there. He didn't go to the palace. And they fell before him to the ground. Verse 14. Literally, before him would be their face is to the ground. Now, you can say that it's a sign of humility, but it is actually a respect for who they think Joseph is. Now, one of the interesting things is, by the time you read this, they fell their faces to the ground, would give you back the idea of the dream of Joseph, right? The sheaves would bend down towards Joseph. The sun, the moon, and the stars, they would fall down before Joseph. And so this is literally a fulfillment of the dream of Joseph. And Joseph said to them, "What is this thing that you have done?" Now the word deed is from the word asa. What have you done? Right? What have you done? Did you not know that such a man I can certainly practice divination? Did you know that he, Joseph, can tell the secrets? That is what divination means. It has both the connotation of an abomination of God, that you do all these things that you practice, but this is where God has given Joseph an ability to tell dreams. And so he says, I can tell what is happening. That's what Joseph is saying. And literally, this actually scares them, right? This literally scares them. Verse 16, Judah said, "What shall we say to my Lord?" Again, this is Adoni, as opposed to Adonai, right? What can we say? How can we clear ourselves? We are actually innocent. God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Did God do this? So this is another thing that you need to understand. As a cultural practice, anything they do not understand, they ascribe to God. Literally, they don't understand why the silver cup was found there. And so they said, well, this must be God, right? So here we are, my Lord's slaves. We are now slaves to you, both we and he who also the cup was found. But the initial explanation was only the one, Benjamin, would be the servant. But now they are saying all of us will be your slaves. Why? Because they are coming together as a family. But he said, far be it from me that I should do so. This is Joseph. I am not going to do this. The man in whose hand the cup was found, he shall be my slave. Basically, Joseph wants Benjamin because they are very close. They are from the same mother, and he misses him. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. You can all go home. So that is the net of the actions that Joseph wanted with the cup. Now Judah came near to Joseph and said, "Oh my Lord," again, Adoni, "please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's hearing, very quietly. And do not let your anger burn against your servant." You notice all these words are very descriptive, very imaginative. They're all action words that you can actually sit down and hear the words, and you can vividly imagine the anger burning, the anger rising. Now anger is an abstract word, and this is basically your nose. Okay, your anger in verse 18 literally means your nose. Burn means be hot. And so these are vivid words that you can actually imagine. Do not let your nose be hot against your servant. So in English, don't let your anger be raised. Right? You are like Pharaoh. Now this is a recognition. You are not Pharaoh, but you are like Pharaoh because you have that kind of power. My Lord asked his servant, saying, "Have you a father or a brother?" And we said to my Lord, "We have a father, an old man, a child of his old age who is young. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children. His father loves him." What is this talking about? This is Benjamin, right? The old man is Jacob, and a child of his age who is young. His brother is dead. This is Benjamin. His brother is dead, is Joseph. And he alone is left of his mother's children, right? This is Rachel, Rachel. This is the whole story. And his father loves him. Instead of Joseph, who has died, the love of Joseph is now placed on Benjamin. This is said by Judah. And then you said to your servants, "Bring him down to me that I may set my eyes on him." And then we said to my Lord, "No, this young man cannot leave his father, but if he leave his father, father will die. But you said to your servants, unless your youngest brother comes here, you shall see my face no more." This was the story that we read in the earlier chapters. So in verse 24, that was exactly what happened. We went to our father, we told him the words, and the father said, "Go back, buy us a little food, but we cannot go down unless our youngest brother is with us, Benjamin. Then we will go down, for we may not see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us." So remember, Joseph, my Lord, you said all these things. Then your servant, this is Judah. sorry. In verse 27, then your servant, my father, and this would be Jacob, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons, and the one went out from me. Went out from me would be Joseph. And I said, surely he is torn to pieces. That's the story that Judah gave. And I have not seen him since. And if you take this one also from me, and calamity befalls him, or anything bad happens to him. Now, verse 28 has a very unusual word. Verse 29. He says, if he meets with an accident, calamity, right? An accident. Like the animal that torn Joseph to pieces, so the story goes. And if this same thing happens to Benjamin, you shall bring my gray hair with sorrow to the grave. That literally means that Jacob will be very, 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 very sad. In this last part, verse 30, therefore, when I come to your servant, my father, when I, Judah, come to Jacob, and the lad is not with us, his life is bound up in the lad's life, because of Jacob and Benjamin's life is together. And if that's the case, if Benjamin doesn't come back with us, my father will die. So your servant will bring down gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. 32. For your servant came with surety. Now, this is the word I want to talk about. Verse 32. Surety. Guarantee. Right? This is a guarantee. This is a pledge. This is like giving a down payment. It is a guarantee that that Benjamin will come back. Because what is the guarantee? This is the guarantee. The words that Judah said. That if Benjamin doesn't come back, you can blame me forever. It means that Judah has given his word to Jacob as a guarantee that Benjamin will definitely come back. But now Joseph wants Benjamin to stay with him, and Judah is in difficulty. And so in verse 33, we read this. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the lad as a slave to my Lord. Keep me, Judah, as your slave. Let Benjamin go back and go home with his brothers, because I cannot go back to my father if Benjamin is not with me. Perhaps I see the evil that will come upon my father. Now again, evil. Look at verse 34. Evil is the same evil as before. And so when Judah says it is evil, it is from his eyes. What is not the intention? Well, this evil is said that the father will go to his grave with sadness. And that is considered evil. You see that? It's evil because it is wrong in Judah's eyes. His father should not be so sad. So evil really does not mean moral bad. It just means that in the eyes of the one who is speaking, evil would be what is not intended. And so that you can see, do not jump to the conclusion evil means always morally bad. Evil to the father would be something that Judah doesn't want to befall the father. And that is what it means in verse 34, that will come upon my father. So what is the evil? Going to the grave with his gray hair and being sad. And this is what it means. If Benjamin doesn't come back, he will die. And so he will bring down the gray hair of your servant, our father, with sorrow to the grave. This is the evil. And Judah says, this should not happen. This should not happen. And so that is what evil means in the general language. Now let's go on to chapter 45. In chapter 45, after hearing these words of Judah about Jacob, how sorrowful Jacob already is when Joseph is gone, and now if Benjamin was gone, he could literally die. And then Joseph could not restrain himself before all those who stood by him, including the guards. And he cried out. What does it mean he cried out? He made very sure, loud voice. He called out, "Make everyone go out from me. Go away from me." Well, what do you mean, go away from me? Go away from out of his presence. That's basically it. Which means that they are in a room and they are to go out from the room. So notice this word, go out. So all these have meaning, in, out, and the intent of all these directions, emotions, it is because we are reading the Bible, but in the days where the Israelites were hearing this, their mind would be knowing exactly what actions are happening. And so these people are going out from the presence of Joseph. And so no one stood with him while Joseph made known to his brothers. Now in verse 2, he wept aloud. Now I think this is hard for us to describe. This is crying in a loud voice. He is literally crying, right? He is crying with a loud voice. So how loud was that? The Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh even heard it. So this is perhaps what you can see, a wail, right? A big, loud voice that he cried. And after that, this word is and then. Notice, this is after crying so loud. Now, how long he cried, we don't know. But after he cried, Joseph said to his brother, "I am Joseph. I'm Joseph. Does my father still live?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. What does it mean, dismayed? This word dismay, I think you can say very alarmed, very afraid. Not the afraid as terrified, but it's like so surprised, like what actually happened? And this word is they were also shocked. That I think that would be an easier way to understand. They were shocked in his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come near to me." And so they came near, they approached him. Then he says, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." This is important, right? So let's take a look at all the words he's saying. I am Joseph. Does my father still live? They were dismayed, shocked. Okay, shocked. And says, come near to me. And they came near. It says, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. This is a fact. But now, do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourself because you sold me here. It looks like Joseph has been so forgiving. He says, don't be grieved. Don't be hurt. Okay? Don't be hurt. Or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. Literally sold. Because you sold him to the caravan of the Ishmaelite or the Midianites who came into Egypt and then sold to Potiphar. And so he says, for God sent me before you to preserve life. So now Joseph looks back and says, you know what? And you know, everything they cannot describe, they actually say that it's God. Just now, when they couldn't understand why the silver cup was in the bag, they said, God has found us out. And now Joseph said, well, we didn't understand what happened, so you can say that it's God sent me here. Why? Because I can now see that I am here, I can preserve life. I can make sure that everybody can still live. It says, for these 2 years, the famine has been in the land. Now remember, if you have your math, how long will the famine be? 7 years. 2 years here, and there are still 5 years where there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. So this is part of that 7 years. Now in this case, Joseph says, God sent me before you to preserve a posterity of you, for you in the earth, to save your lives by a great deliverance. Now that Egypt has grain, you are all safe. And there will be the future descendants. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his house, and ruler throughout the land of Egypt. Now, if you remember the entire story, it is not like this hindsight, look back. There were so many challenges for Joseph. He was with Potiphar, and then the wife came and tempted him. He decided not to. He was thrown into the prison for a while. He had grace in the eyes of the master there. And then he told the dreams. And then finally, he was remembered. And when he was remembered, he told it to Pharaoh of his 2 dreams. He was made the number 1 in the land and number 2 on the throne. What has happened? 2 years have passed. The first year, remember in the early chapters of chapter 40, they came and they went back. And now they came back with Benjamin, that is year 2. So they bought enough for a year each time. And now Joseph relates back and says, praise be to God. And so this is how the Hebrews learned to ascribe things to God. Did God make the brothers want to kill Joseph? No. This was all done on the accord of the brothers. But instead of Joseph dying, Joseph went through all his trials and tribulation, and he survived, and he did the right thing before God, and God promoted him in the presence of the Pharaoh and used him to protect his family. And so the story, as Joseph relates back, speaks well of God. That is how it's related. Verse 9. And now Joseph says, go back to my father, and says to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not wait. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen. And even then, all the way until Exodus, they were in the land of Goshen. And by the way, the land of Goshen is a beautiful place, a very fertile land. And all of them stayed there. And you shall be near to me, you and your children, your children's children, your flocks and your herds, and all that you have. Notice, it appears that Joseph is planning to have them stay in Egypt for a long time. There I will provide for you, lest you and your household and all that you have come to poverty, for there are still 5 years of famine. And behold, your eyes and the eyes of my brothers Benjamin, see that is in my mouth that speaks to you. So Joseph is saying to the brothers, including Benjamin, the one that Jacob loves, that they are eyewitnesses. So that it is not mere hearsay. Eyewitnesses is very important in the Hebrew culture, that it is not just, I heard from somebody, but here all of you are eyewitnesses. And so you shall tell my father of all my glory in Egypt and all that you have seen. Notice, eyewitnesses. And you shall hurry and bring my father down here. Why? Because Joseph misses Jacob. Verse 14, he fell on Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck. So they hugged each other. And moreover, he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. And after that, his brothers talked to him. This is a reconciliation. And I think they should realize that the dreams of Joseph is very real. Verse 16, now the report of it was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph's brothers have come. And so it pleased Pharaoh and his servants well, because they were also happy with Joseph, and that if they are Joseph's brothers, they are equally welcome. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your animals, depart, go to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your household and come to me. See, this is not only Joseph's desire, Pharaoh is equally welcoming. And I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now understand this. It is quite interesting that you see this fat. Fat is from animals. The fat of the land has a meaning. The fat of the land means the best, the choices, the one that you choose, and that would be what you choose as best. So whenever you say the fat is given to the Lord, you are giving the best to the Lord. Now, literally speaking, the fat belongs to the Lord. And so you burn fat as an offering in the later times. But basically, you need to understand the word fat. And in Genesis chapter 4, you see the word fat when Abel brought the fat. And so the idea here of fat literally means the best part of the land, because the land doesn't have fat, right? And so you will eat the best of the land. And so Joseph not only says that to the brothers, Pharaoh says, I will give. Now, who has authority over the land? The Pharaoh. And so now you are commanded, do this. Take the carts out of the land of Egypt for your little ones and your wives. Bring your father and come back. And do not be concerned about your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. You notice that whatever has happened is not just the doing of Jacob, but the Pharaoh loves Joseph. And whoever Joseph is related to, the Pharaoh loves as well. And you notice love is not a word, love is action. And so Pharaoh gave the best of the land of Egypt to the Hebrews. And this is literally love, right? This is Pharaoh describing and depicting love, because it gives the best to them. Verse 21. In this next segment, the sons of Israel. Why does it play the father and the sons of Israel? This is literally Jacob. And so these are Jacob's sons. And Joseph gave them carts. Now, what's the difference between cart and what they came with? They came with donkeys. Cart means a whole lot more, according to the command of Pharaoh. and he gave them provisions for the journey. He gave all of them, to each man changes of garments. But to Benjamin, Joseph gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. You notice the number 5. When they were having dinner, Joseph gave Benjamin 5 times the amount of food. So you notice the Hebrew way of describing things is very vivid. That when you say you love somebody, you actually show. And hence, this is how love is depicted. He sent to his father these things: 10 donkeys. 10, a share means complete, loaded with good things of Egypt. 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and food for his father for the journey. Well, you notice this is more than what an old man can eat. And so he sent his brothers away, and they departed, and he said to them, see that you do not become trouble along the way. Don't change your mind. Don't be worried. Okay? The final segment of chapter 45 says this: they went out of Egypt, came to the land of Canaan, to Jacob his father. And here, you know, it is Israel, his father. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. Look at verse 26. Verse 26 says governor. But basically, there is no Hebrew word for governor here. It literally means that he rules. Right? He rules. The ruler. Right? Either that or you can call him ruler. And so the word governor is an English word. Right? There is no governor like chief minister there. So he is the ruler over all the land of Egypt. And they can see and describe his power. The level of authority is over all of Egypt. But then in your mind, isn't the head of Egypt the Pharaoh? And the answer is yes. But the Pharaoh delegated it to Joseph. And so Joseph now rules over the land of Egypt. If you remember, in chapter 38, it says, on the throne, Joseph will be number 2. But over his household and the land, he is number 1. Now look at the reception of Jacob. Israel's heart stood still. You notice it's very, very action-oriented. Verse 36. What does it mean to stand still? Well, I think in a modern day, we could say that his heart stopped. Right? He was so shocked that his heart stopped. So that would be a good word to describe. His heart was shocked. His heart stopped. Because he did not believe that, he could not believe his ears, because in his life, Joseph has died. But now he is alive. But when they told him all the words which Joseph had said to them, and when he saw the cards which Joseph had sent, now 2 things, right? One is the eyewitness testimony. They heard Joseph said, and he repeated it. And the second is evidence that he could see for himself. You notice all of these are very vivid imageries that you can actually play a movie in your head. That Jacob saw the carts. These are unusual because it will never happen. They went with donkeys and came back with carts. And so what did the sentence say? The spirit of Jacob, their father, revived. This is stood still, revived. These are the opposites. Okay? In verse 27, revive means what? Be alive again. So if it stopped, it started beating. Now, obviously, he didn't die. It is just an expression that he was shocked. He could not believe them. What does believe mean? You see in verse 26, The word believe, right here, is to stand firm. That is what faith is all about. Stand firm on the word. But he did not stand firm on their words. Why? Because he couldn't believe his ears. Because in his mind, Joseph has died. So he could not believe. He could not have faith. He could not stand firm. He could not have confidence in what he said. So you notice belief is very action-oriented. And then he heard the words, which is eyewitness testimony. And then he saw for himself. And then the spirit of Jacob. What is the spirit of Jacob? The spirit of Jacob is the wind of Jacob. The wind of Jacob started blowing again, literally speaking. So the wind of Jacob is an expression of his presence of mind, maybe, right? It started to be alive again. So the word revive is to breathe life. So here it's as if that he died. Here he has life again. So the wind of Jacob is seen. So you can actually look at Jacob and see that he is alive again. And then Israel. So you notice the play of words. You have Jacob here and then you have Israel here. So all it says is Jacob and Israel is the same word. All right? And he said, it is enough. He has seen a lot. It is enough. So basically, it's literally, I have heard you saying it. I can see it for myself. Although I don't see Joseph, I can see the effects. And so the word believe is now, he can now stand firm on their words. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I can see your evidence. I will go and see him before I die. What does it mean before I die? The word before is the word begin. All right? Before as to begin to die. Well, he is old and he will know that before he comes to the point where he knows that he's going to die, he wants to go and see Joseph. That's what it means. Literally, it's the words of an old man. And I suppose an old man knows his time. And so this is what it means. Before he begins to die, before his tail end of his life. And he will go to see Joseph. And the word see is literally that he can see with his eyes. Right? See with his eyes. And so you notice the Hebrew words are all very, very picturesque, right? You can actually imagine how it says that Joseph is alive, that I will want to go and see him with my own eyes before I begin to die. And hence, this is the end of chapter 45. We come to the end for today. Go through it again so you can see this is a reunion, and I just try to highlight some of the words to you, like believe. These are not our English abstract words. They are all very concrete, very action-oriented. So throughout these two chapters, you can see that things you can actually imagine how it's working in your head, right? So go back and go through it so that you can come to an understanding that none of these things are abstract. They are abstract words, but it has concrete meanings. We shall continue next week. We have only 5 more chapters to go.
Okay.
Okay, bye.
Thank you.